everyone, I'm the Critical Wizard, and I want to start off today by saying your comments have been heard. As you can see, I'm sitting. Also, you may notice that the video itself is not nearly as long as my other two videos were for this category, and that is because everyone I talked to said that the video was too long. So, to fix this, I'm going to keep my nitpicking at a very minimum. And unless the movies I choose to review are absolutely awful, in that case, I will be completely ripping them apart. But the movie I've chosen today is not, so you're welcome. Also, I don't know if you noticed, or you can notice, but my audio might sound a little better. I've hung some sheets around this room, and hopefully it will boost the audio a bit by removing the reverberation. So at the very least, I hope that the echo has been taken care of. If there's something that hasn't been fixed that you'd like to see fixed, let me know in the comments. Or if you like the fixes I've made and like it to stay exactly the same, you can tell me that too. So, let's get into the review. Today, I will be critically reviewing the movie Seven. I have to start off and say that this is one of my all-time favorite murder mystery type movies, and I have to warn you guys right now, I will be giving away some spoilers toward the end, but I will not be spoiling the ending for you guys. You're gonna have to watch the movie and figure it out for yourself, because it is definitely one of the best endings to a horror movie I've ever seen. So, sit back and enjoy the review. The movie starts off with Detective Lieutenant William Somerset getting ready to go to work, and he's played by none other than Morgan Freeman. I'm just gonna take a side note for real quick here to say, how great is it that Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt are playing our two main detectives? I don't really think it could get any better than that. We then get the opening credits scene, where we see a pair of hands meticulously working on something. We don't know what they're working on. You just see crazed writing in a notebook. You see a razor blade removing finger-like prints. It's quite interesting. You also see a lot of very strange and somewhat disturbing pictures of people clearly not in a good situation. And it gives you an idea of the mindset of our killer for this movie. After the opening credits scene, you see Mills preparing for his first full day of actually being at work. And this is a good scene to introduce another main character, which is Mills' wife, played by Gwyneth Paltrow. We then find our first victim. He is this huge, really big, fat guy who has eaten himself to death. Somerset then discovers that the man's hands and feet had been bound, showing that someone had forced him to eat himself to death. At the autopsy, they find bruises on the man's head, showing that someone had held a gun to him and forced him to eat himself to death. Later, when they're revealing their findings to their superior, you also learn that the man's throat had been completely swollen, most likely from yelling for help, and also that the final thing that actually killed him was a kick right to the stomach, causing him to burst from within. I cannot imagine being forced at gunpoint to eat myself, to feel like I'm about to burst, and then have that person who's been forcing me to eat kick me directly and cause me to actually burst. I don't even want to think about that. At any rate, Somerset really wants off this case because, he's retiring at the end of the week, and he doesn't want this to be his last case because he knows this type of case just goes on, and he doesn't want it to be his last because if he leaves in the middle of the case, he'll never feel satisfied with the results of that. On the other hand, Mills really wants this case. He tells the chief, he's like, oh, he doesn't want it, I'll take it. In a strange turn of events, the chief of police removes Mills from the case entirely and forces Somerset to continue the case. The next day, we see Mills arrive at yet another murder site. This time, it is defense attorney Eli Gold. The victim had been forced to cut himself and was left to bleed out. Also, the word greed was written on the floor in blood. On the other hand, Somerset goes back to the house where they had retrieved the fat man's body because the autopsy had revealed strange, small plastic objects found in the man's stomach. So Somerset goes to see if there's anything else that the forensic team might have missed. And they did, because after he moved the fridge, on the wall behind the fridge, written in grease, is the word gluttony. And underneath that, nailed to the wall, is a small note, with a quote from Milton. After discovering this and seeing the parallel between this murder and Eli Gold's murder, Somerset then goes to the library and does all the research he needs to find everything about the 7 deadly sins. Parallel to this, Mills is looking over the file cases, just like he himself is trying to figure it all out and like make a connection between the Eli Gold murder and the Fat Man's murder. But he cannot figure it out, which is why Somerset is there to help him. In the next scene, we learn more about Gold's murder, and that, unlike the Fat Man who had to eat himself to death, Gold was a little more complicated. He actually had to cut off pieces of his flesh. There could be like no bone, no blood, I think it was, no fat. It had to be like meat from his body, and he had to put it in a scale, and it had to weigh exactly 1 pound or something like that. So yeah, I think there wasn't allowed to be blood in it because blood weighs a lot. But similarly to the Fat Man, his feet were bound, meaning he was definitely forced to do this. He didn't do this by choice. And as Somerset reveals to us, this is all part of the 7 deadly sins trial that, he had researched earlier in the library. After telling Gold's wife that her husband has been murdered, the detectives then find out from her that one of the paintings in their office is upside down. So, Mills and Somerset go to check it out. After investigating that further, on the wall behind where the painting is, they find the words written in fingerprints, "Help me." So at this point, there's only been 2 confirmed murders, and already you can tell this has been more than a couple of weeks of planning. This is close to being months, maybe even years at this point. The prints belonged to a man who was nicknamed Victor, who had a very long mental health list. He just had so many mental illnesses that the police just expected him to be the guy they were after. So they readied the SWAT team, mount up a raid of his last known address, kick in the door, only to find him barely alive, tied up to a bed in an entire apartment full of air fresheners. The word sloth written in blood right above his the backboard of his bed. Huge, disgusting lesions on his body, and just every single kind of drug pumping through his veins just to keep him alive. They also found photos dated exactly a year ago, which shows our suspicion of this planning taking more than just a couple of weeks to be true. This killer has been planning all of this for an entire year. An entire year. Hell, I know people who can't even stay focused on one thing for more than a couple of hours. And this man, or whoever the killer is, has been doing this to this poor guy for over a year. To spend all the time and money just to keep this guy alive and restrained for a year is just patience I can't even fathom. At this point in the film, there's been 2 murders, and a 3rd person who'd been tortured for an entire year. The detectives are kind of scratching their heads at this point, so Somerset decides to set up a meeting with an FBI agent who actually monitors people's reading habits at the library. So they meet the guy, he gives them the information, and they track down a guy by the name of Jonathan Doe. The detectives arrive at Jonathan Doe's apartment. You know, they knock on the door, they're waiting for him to come and answer, and down the hall, Somerset notices a man, you know, carrying groceries returning. The man sees them standing outside the apartment, drops the groceries, pulls a gun, and starts firing at them, and then runs off. The detectives realize this is their guy, so Mills runs after him, and Somerset's like, no, wait, we should, like, have backup or something. But Mills is like, I gotta stop this guy, so he runs off after him. This is a chase scene that leads through the remainder of the apartment complex, across building rooftops into another building, and then through a crowded street into an alleyway where the murderer does get the upper hand on Mills and like kind of hits him with a crowbar and has a gun pointed to his head and is going to kill him, but then here's Somerset coming up and he decides to leave. So after that burst of excitement, we see Mills and Somerset and the remainder of the officers raiding like the killer's apartment. A room with like just craziness spilled out everywhere. It's kind of like his like thoughts all on paper. They find Victor's disembodied hand that he had cut off to use and plant the fingerprints earlier. And, you know, there's just crazy religious things everywhere. And then they also find a red room. If you don't know what a red room is, back in the old days when they used film and cameras, they actually used these special lighted rooms to cure the film so that way you could, you know, see the pictures you took or watch the video you took. In the red room, there are photos of Mills, and specifically an angle taken from one of a cameraman who was literally right in front of them, and they didn't know he was the killer yet. And they're like, we could have had him, but we didn't know. Another object of interest is the notebooks, his personal journals. Like, there are over 200 journals, all written, like, you know, 250 pages a piece, front and back, filled. 200, over 200 notebooks and journals just filled this entire room of his just crazy thoughts just spilled out on paper. That's incredible to think about. Like, this goes back into the same thing I was talking about earlier, where it's like, I can't even fathom the amount of patience this guy has had. Then the phone rings, and on the other end is the killer, Doe. And he tells them that because of them raiding his apartment this soon, and he wasn't planning on that, he's had to push his plans forward. He also goes in to tell them how much he admires them. But at the same time, he's also taunting them with the information that, yes, you have, like, you know, found my secret lair, essentially, but that doesn't really help you because only I know how to access the information in this. They have him in their hands, but also he's still free, he's still out there. Which is just one of the many reasons why I love this scene, because in so many different ways, it shows that, yes, they have him, but at the same time, they let him go. Like in the scene earlier, like it refers directly to this. It's like, you know, they had him, he was on the stairs taking pictures of them, they could have grabbed him and thrown him in jail. But they let him go, because they didn't know. Same thing with this apartment full of his thoughts and rooms. Yes, they have all this information on him, but that's not going to help them because only he knows how to correctly read these things and access the important information and clear out the crap. Our detectives then go to a leather sex shop that John Doe had stopped by. When they arrive and question the guy behind the counter, they find out that he had made a custom order that he had came and personally picked up like the night before. And just then, Somerset gets paged that they're needed downtown. When they arrive downtown in a kink bar, they find another victim. as they go into the room, there on the door you can see the word carved, lust. And then you don't get to see too much, but you can see a woman who is clearly stabbed several times lying in a bed, and there's a man screaming, "Get this thing off me." The woman is the same woman who was in one of the pictures that John Doe had snapped and was in the room full of pictures. The custom-made item that John Doe had this place make was a blade strap-on. A blade strap-on! Okay, clearly we know this guy's insane who, ordered it. But there has to be something said about the person who, makes this thing and never once thinks, wow, this is really suspicious and could hurt somebody. Maybe I should call the cops at this point. I can't even, fathom that. Basically, we find out that John Doe had made this poor guy, wear this thing and proceed to stab this woman multiple times. And I thought that, getting kicked in the stomach and bursting at the seams was painful. Wow. This next scene is actually a really cool scene, the way they do it. So, 911 gets a call from the killer, John Doe, and he's like, I've gone and done it again. So you see Mills and Somerset at the scene, and they find a woman who's had her face all cut up. Her nose is gone. It was bandaged, but she was given a choice. You can call for help, but you'd be forced to live with a disfigured face for the rest of your life. Or you could take the easy way out. And in one hand, she had a telephone glued into her hand. The other hand, she had an empty bottle of sleeping pills glued into her hand. Seeing as how she's dead, you obviously know what choice she made. On the wall behind her is the word written, pride. Oh man, each death is just so much worse than the last. I can see where Jigsaw got most of his ideas. And Jigsaw knows how to torture people and definitely took that to an extreme, but later that same day at the police station, John Doe walks in and turns himself in. Of course, this is a superly dramatic scene, because at this point, there's been 5 deaths, 5 of the deadly sins, and there's 2 more deaths to come. And here comes John Doe just strutting on into the police station covered in blood, and he's like, I surrender. And you're like, what did you do? John tells his lawyer that he will personally take Detective Mills and Detective Somerset to the bodies of the last 2 people he murdered. Only those 2 officers, though. They agree, and as they're driving there, they're asking him questions, trying to figure more about him. But they only further the fact that he is insane and he will do anything to, push forward his just insane ideas. When they arrive at the spot that Doe had said the bodies were, it's nothing but an open field in, the desert area. And then a delivery truck drives up. And the man in the delivery truck was told to be there exactly at 7 and to deliver a package to Detective David Mills. Somerset, being the one who had went over to talk to this guy while Mills was guarding Doe, takes the small box.
The box! What was in the box?
Somerset takes the box and sends the delivery driver off. Now, the police who are monitoring them immediately are like, it's a bomb, it has to be a bomb, and they call for the bomb squad. Out of pure curiosity and the knowledge that they have about Doe, Somerset decides to open it. So, he opens the box and is just horrified to find out what's inside.
What's in the box?
Doe proclaims this is what he's always wanted. He wants Mills to kill him because he himself exhibits a sin, the sin of envy. And
he wants Mills to become the sin of wrath. I'm going to stop it right there because, as I said, I may have given away some spoilers, but I'm not going to spoil the ending because the ending is just too good. You know, it's just one of those movies you have to watch to the end just to figure out what happened. I personally think this is an awesome movie. And to this day, I still have not been able to find a movie, like a murder mystery type movie, that I like more than this film. Freeman and Pitt are just fantastic, you know? The whole movie just keeps you right on the edge of your seat. You don't know what's gonna happen next. And the ending. That is like the perfect way to end this movie. Like, I don't want to give it away because it's just so good. This movie is just the best, you know? I loved every minute of this movie, and it's one of those films that I could just watch over and over again and never think it got old. In conclusion, this movie is definitely worth a watch, and I'll see you next time.